So one of my favorite cocktails, probably the most famous cocktail, is the Old Fashioned. It's one of my favorites to make late at night, nightcap. Sometimes I start the night off with one of these. It's an Old Fashioned, and I'm gonna go through all the ingredients. I'm gonna show you two different ways to make this. It's really simple. I'm gonna show you some of the steps that I like to skip. But let's get into the ingredients. Obviously, you need some bourbon. My favorite right now, Maker's Mark, really affordable. Yes, this is a big bottle because I got it from Costco. Some sugar, you can use simple syrup. That's gonna be the easiest, but if you want the classic, Demerara sugar, it's basically a brown sugar and it's got a lot of flavor. This is raw, unrefined, and I just like this. The only thing with it is you want to make sure it dissolves into your bourbon. I'll show you how I do that. And of course, the bitters. I use a combination of orange bitters as well as old-fashioned bitters. Just try the way you like it. You can either use both or one or the other. Now, in addition to that is the ice. So I use ice to actually mix everything up in my cocktail mixing glass and my cocktail strainer, but I pour everything over a clear ice. Now this is square, as you can see. I'm gonna carve this into a sphere and I'm gonna show you exactly how to do it and why this is important for old fashions. If you go to a bar and they have clear ice like this, you had a good bar. If you go to a bar and they give you this kind of ice, I don't know, I would question the old fashioned. It's still gonna be good, I will still drink it, but if I see one of these guys, you know you're at the right place. So I'm gonna go through all the steps and show you the first, most basic way to make an old fashioned right now. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna do is put one of these sugar cubes. That's not really a cube shape, but these sugar chunks right at the bottom. I start off by putting the bitters right on top of that sugar chunk, I guess you could say. And as I mentioned, I use a combination. 1 sugar cube, 2 squirts of the orange, 2 squirts of the old-fashioned bitters. As I mentioned, you can use one or the other. It's really your choice. And then with that, I'm gonna put 2 shots of Maker's Mark bourbon. Now, obviously, you don't have to use Maker's Mark. That's just what I prefer right now. 1 shot, 2 shot, and just because I love bourbon, maybe a half a shot. Maybe that's a whole shot, I don't know. Okay, so this is a step that most people skip, and I saw this at a bar in Texas once, specifically in Dallas, and they just muddle that sugar. The reason I like to do this is because that sugar is gonna take some time to dissolve, and just to help it get going, I'm just gonna muddle it a little bit. One of the things that is my pet peeve when I go to a bar is when they do this and you can kind of see it, that sugar is not dissolved yet. So the way you deal with that is not only muddle it, you're gonna mix it like this and just let it sit. Yes, I know that it's annoying to have to wait for your cocktail, but this is a good time to go through the other part that's really important, the ice. Clear ice. Why this is important, by the way, if you want to know how to make clear ice, I have a whole nother video. You can also use an ice mold and make sure you get one that freezes from the top to bottom. Just do your research and you know what I mean. The reason using clear ice, and by the way, I'm using a bread knife to just chop it off. This has been sitting out for a good 10 minutes, so the ice is soft. I know that sounds strange to say soft ice, but it's soft enough for me to do this. But there's a reason for this madness. The reason you want clear ice is because when you freeze ice in this manner, where it's completely clear, number one, there's no impurities. So if you're using a really nice bourbon, which you don't have to, but say you are, or maybe even rye, you want those flavors to come out, and you don't want anything to get in the way of those flavors. So this clear ice is completely pure. There's no, funky stuff going on. There's no weird flavors, and it's not going to impart anything strange. If you've ever had really bad tap water, shout out to Las Vegas. I love you as a city. Don't like your water. That tap water, if you freeze into normal ice cubes that go into, like ice dispenser, it's just horrible. This has no flavor because of the way it freezes. It freezes from the top down. Really important for cocktails. Honestly, any kind of cocktail, it's gonna be really important. The second reason is when you have clear ice, it melts slower. The reason you want a sphere compared to the square shape, there's less surface area on a sphere than a cube. Just trust me on it. And it's just cool inside the glass. So I'm just gonna cut this into as close to a sphere as possible, and then I will put it into the glass. And by that time, the bourbon should have melted most of that sugar, and we can finish making our old fashioned. That's close enough right there. Look at how beautiful that is. Clear ice, completely worth it. Okay, so that sugar has really dissolved. There's still some granules in there, which is totally fine. I don't need all of them to dissolve, but way more dissolved than if I were to just pour that right over the ice. So this part is also very key. Now, you're gonna go the opposite and you're gonna cool this down. The reason you wanna mix this with no ice is so that it dissolves the sugar, but now you wanna cool this down. I also saw this in Dallas, Texas, where the bartender put ice into the mixer before he poured it onto the actual ice, which by the way, let's just make sure this fits. There you go. It doesn't quite fit perfectly, but you're gonna see something cool in a second. Now you're gonna stir. The reason you're doing this is to cool down your old fashioned before pouring it onto your spherical ice into the cocktail glass so it's nice and cool. And I just do this for probably 1 minute, and yes, it is gonna be melting a little bit of that ice, but not that much. This is just to cool it down. Now, if you want really good ice in here, you can totally put that in there, but just the outside of the ice is totally fine. And again, I'm just cooling down slightly. Now you just pour it over. Look at that. Look at that, baby. Look at that right there. Clear ice, old fashioned, really basic. Now, what's missing from this? You don't have an orange peel and there's no cherries. I actually personally love having an orange peel or even a lemon peel, and I do love having cherries, but this is really all you need in my opinion. See, the cherry is, there's different levels of cherries, and if you like them, put them in there, but I don't think it's gonna change the enjoyment or the taste or flavor of the old fashioned. And then also, because I put orange bitters in there, I don't find that I need the orange peel, and plus, I lost my orange peeler. This right here is the standard and still, in my opinion, the best old-fashioned recipe. Really basic, but really good. Nice and cold. Because that ice is clear, it's not gonna impart any, bad flavors into the old-fashioned, because this is a sipping type of drink. Now, I can drink these pretty fast, but if I'm using really nice bourbon, Maker's Mark, they have different levels of bourbon. I might want to taste the flavor of the bourbon, and you're going to be able to taste different notes from that same bourbon, especially a nice bourbon, as the ice melts slowly. And that's the key, because if you put regular ice, like this ice in here, it's just gonna melt so fast, it's gonna be watered down, and it's not gonna be sippable and enjoyable, and you're not gonna be able to appreciate the special flavors and delicate notes that come out of a high-end bourbon. So this one, basic, Maker's Mark. I love basic bourbons, but if you're using something fancy, you want that clear ice. Look how clear that is. No bubbles, no fog, just straight, pure water, and of course, bourbon. Cheers. So I finished my old fashioned, and look at this ice right here. It is still a sphere. It hasn't melted enough to where I have to use another ice. I've been able to use one of these at least 3 times for 3 different cocktails, depending on how fast I'm drinking. I'm gonna use a more fancy glass this time, just to kind of be able to give you a visual look at that. Okay, the fancy old fashioned. I only call this fancy because this bottle looks fancy. But instead of using regular sugar, like that sugar cube I showed you. I'm gonna be using maple syrup. Now this is a fancy bourbon barrel aged maple syrup I bought from Costco. I used to use regular maple syrup, but I bought this and I only use this for old fashioned, so hence why I still got a lot of it. So let me make it right now. All right, mixing glass right there. Gonna put the maple syrup. This maple syrup is really good. It's perfect because it already has some of that bourbon flavor to it. I don't know why you would use it on pancakes, honestly. I like my maple syrup kind of pure. I'm just gonna be using the orange bitters, not the old-fashioned bitters. Do 3 splashes of that. And of course, Maker's Mark bourbon. Obviously use any bourbon you want. I think bourbon is amazing because you don't need to spend that much for good bourbon, and Maker's Mark is a great value. And that is it. I'm gonna put in the ice. Now I know there's already gonna be comments saying, hey, wasn't the whole point of using spherical ice that's clear so it doesn't impart any, you know, other flavors? One of the things about regular ice, like what I'm putting in here, all the impurities are in the middle of the ice. That white fog you see, that is what I'm trying to prevent by using clear ice. So outside of this ice is actually clear. That stuff is okay. It's the inside that you're trying to avoid. That's why you can mix it into this. And yes, it does melt. It'll make it colder and it's gonna water it down slightly, but not enough to really make a big difference, at least for my kind of bourbon. Now, if I'm using something super high end, I might not put any ice in there, but it's going to melt this ice a little bit faster. We're going to strain it, pour it in. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, I mentioned I don't need the orange. If I'm gonna use citrus, I'm using a lemon. I'm gonna go ahead and peel this. This is a horrible peeler, but one of the reasons you would do this isn't just to make it look fancy. You literally want some of those oils to come out of the skin. Like I said, this is a horrible, horrible little peeler, but it's gonna do the trick. And that's all you need. It's really important that you do that right over your drink. That off to the side. And because I do love my maraschino cherries, but in this case, this is also Jack Rudy Cocktail Company Bourbon Cocktail Cherries. So we got all kinds of bourbon going on here. I put it on a little toothpick, put that on top, and there you go. Fancy, old fashioned, only fancy because of the maple syrup. What I love about using maple syrup is the fact that it dissolves right away. You don't have to wait for it. So when I want an old fashioned right away, this is what I'm using, maple syrup. And you don't need all the other stuff, but if you want to go all out and make it look pretty, this is what you're going for right here. Clear ice, old fashioned. This is actually a Scotch glass, but it's perfect for an old fashioned. Oh yeah. Old fashioned, 2 different ways. Comment below what's your favorite cocktail. Maybe I'll try one of them and make a video after, you know, I've tried making it a few times. And this is just a late night video. I haven't vlogged in a while. I make old fashions all the time. I've been wanting to make this vlog, but I will be cooking again. I've just been crazy busy. But hopefully you guys enjoyed all my shopping vlogs. I love going to the grocery store, obviously Costco. Leave some comments of recommended vlogs that you want to see here on this channel, whether it's a certain recipe or something I've made or cooked in the regular vlog, and I'll try it out. I'll talk to you guys later. Cheers.